Ladies and gentlemen, do I have a crazy one for you today. Now we are going to be talking about how to reprogram your subconscious mind and experience its true power, your power as a creator. And by the end of this video, you are going to have 6 steps to brainwash the hidden command center of reality for effortless success and abundance. But before I get into the first 6 steps that you actually need to reprogram your subconscious mind, I need to introduce you to a few just super short, super simple concepts that is going to truly educate you on the power of your subconscious mind and how it influences your reality as the hidden command center. Now, before I get into the topics, if you go click the first link in the description, you're going to have access to the workbook for this video. I put together an entire document that's going to have all of this information. It's like a note sheet that you can use to follow along. Now, I also want to highlight the fact that I'm becoming a full-time streamer. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, you could come join me in a live environment and we can chat. But now let's get into the actual super simple key pieces of information you need to understand the subconscious mind. Right? Why is it so important to understand the subconscious mind if we're trying to manifest more for ourselves, if we're trying to experience a new reality? Because whether you realize it or not, the subconscious mind automates and controls 95% of your thoughts, beliefs, and actions. Now, I'm sure you guys have tried to, sit down and intentionally create change in your life, but it just feels like you're hitting this invisible ceiling. And that's because you are. Because the conscious mind actually only has access to 5%. The unconscious mind controls 95% of the experience you have daily. And it does this by feeding you programmed thoughts, which lead to pre-programmed beliefs, which lead to pre-programmed actions. Now, what's so important about this? What's so important is that the subconscious and what you do daily is dictated by the conditioning of the subconscious, not the conscious decision making. Now, I want you to think of some super simple things. Do you have to think about breathing? No. Do you have to think about walking? No. Do you have to think about swallowing? Not at all. Now, what if I told you that you have deeply ingrained energetic programs, and when they are triggered, you are going to experience the same familiar reality you no longer want to experience? Now, that's the first piece of information that I want you to internalize. And if you're following along in the workbook, highlight and take notes, because that's one of the most important things to understand. Now, the second thing I want to touch on is how we actually get the subconscious mind to respond, right? Because it does not respond to our willpower. It does not respond to our conscious thought, our conscious intention. It doesn't respond to will, right? Have you ever tried to force change, to will something in existence, but it just doesn't seem to work? That's because the subconscious mind responds to repetitions. So it only responds to repetition. Now, this is important. We're covering all the 5 key things you need to understand about the subconscious so you can truly reprogram that hidden command center that's controlling your reality. Now, once again, it does not respond to willpower. It does not respond to your willpower. So we want to impress the subconscious mind through repetition, emotion, and identity level shifts. Now, what can we do to actually create identity level shifts? Because yes, you can change your reality with your thoughts and emotions and channeling a new frequency, but this is why affirmations, visualizations, and my personal favorite, habits, are the things that you actually use to reprogram the subconscious to accept new beliefs as a reality, right? Why is it that affirmations, visualizations, and our habits are actually the things that reprogram the subconscious mind through repetition so we can experience a new reality? And that's because the subconscious is the thing that controls your perception of your reality. So let's move on to the next point. Your subconscious controls your perception of reality. And it does this through a filtered belief system. Let's think about it. We got a big word, perception. But what is it? It's really just filtered belief. Now, if you've programmed your subconscious mind to have a certain type of experience time and time again, and you've been unconscious that you've been programming that through your thoughts and emotions and actions like we talk about, you are going to have a certain type of filter. I want you to think about it as you've created this frame, this tunnel vision for how you view the world. Have you ever seen me draw the image of the two people looking at the globe? Because it's your frequency is what you will frequently see in reality. And I'm going to start to kind of tie these things together. But the most important thing you need to understand is that if you think you're unlucky, if you actually believe you're unlucky, you're going to attract more of that into your life because you're putting your focus on it. Where your attention goes, energy flows. And if your subconscious mind has been programmed for years on end to think you're unlucky, to think you're scarce, to think you're not worthy, no wonder your perception is filtering reality to experience that belief more. If you believe you're powerful, reality is going to reflect that to you. But why? But why is it actually going to be the thing that reflects it to you? Because if you think you're unlucky, you're going to have an external frame of validation, right? You're going to blame things on the external world. Oh, these things just happen to me because I'm unlucky. All those things, it's just what I attract. It's just what I attract. Versus someone powerful, rooted in this type of understanding, knows that life is going to naturally have its ebb and flows, right? There's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. But a powerful person has resilience, and a powerful person has a strong mindset. That's why your mindset and your spirituality is so important, because you're always programming your subconscious mind. Everything you do programs your subconscious mind through repetition, right? The affirmations. What are you affirming about yourself? It's not what you just say in the mirror for 5 minutes. It's what you say that other 95% of the time. Are you catching your subconscious thoughts that are triggered, right? This is why meditation is important, because when those things are triggered, are you going to go down the rabbit hole? Are you going to feed them? Or are you going to stop and be like, whoa, Grant, you're not that. I may have had a thought that I was unlucky, but I'm not going to focus on it and allow it to grow more. I'm powerful. That's where you can use your conscious attention in the moment to reshift it. And that act alone is something that reprograms your subconscious mind. Now, let's move on to the next concept. We're almost to the end, and we're going to get to the 6 steps that you can actually use to reprogram in everyday life, because I'm going to give you practical insights and information to do so. So, the subconscious mind is timeless. And it actually accepts everything as literally, right? What do I mean by that? So the subconscious mind is timeless. And literal. The subconscious mind does not understand the English language. It's programmed through energy, right? We have thought and we have emotion, which is both energy. Humans are the only ones that place labels upon things using the English language, right? We have the certain emotional frequency. We have the certain frequency of the thought. Now, this is why the subconscious is non-linear, because the energy you're programming it with at all times is taking that energy on literally. Whatever you're actually feeling and thinking, regardless of how you want it to go down, is going to happen in the resonant frequency that it's occurring at. That's why it's all about energy. That's why it's all about frequency. That's why Dr. David R. Hopkins' map of consciousness is so powerful. But now let's get into the timeless nature of it, because now you're going to understand why visualization and our ability to meditate and enter a timeless state is so important. Because the subconscious mind cannot tell what's real and what's fake. Now, Joe Dispenza talks about this study, right? They split a basketball team into 3 different groups. Now, the first group went into practice for 15 minutes a day and shot free throws. The second group didn't go into the gym at all and only visualized shooting free throws. But the third group went in 15 minutes a day to practice and spent 15 minutes visualizing it. And I'm sure you can guess which one had the greatest impact. No, it's not just the visualization one. The visualization one actually improved the same percentage as the people that went into practice. But the people that actually showed up to practice and actually spent the time to visualize had 2-3 times the amount of growth and success than the people that only engaged in one. And the reason I'm telling you this story is because you may be consuming really good content for yourself. You might be using the workbook and spending time consuming the proper information. Shit, you might even spend time meditating and actually affirming things and visualizing things. But that's just half the battle. The other half of the battle is actually showing up and doing the things that you want to see happen. That's the secret. If you want your manifestations to come to life, you can do it in a lot quicker of a manner. And that's through actually bringing real world implementation to match the visualization. Because the visualization teaches you how you're going to show up in the real world. Think about it. If I'm driving on the road and someone cuts me off, but I've been spending a lot of time getting present and meditating and realizing like, hey, I'm not going to let these external things influence me, and that happens, I could initially feel that emotion and that shock and that scare and be like, oh my God. But then be like, Grant, you've been practicing for this. We actually meditated and visualized on this. That person's just probably in a rush. They got somewhere to be. Who knows? Their wife could be in labor, right? That's the powerful individual that has programmed their subconscious mind for the positive experience. Now, let's get on to the fifth thing, because the subconscious does something that I'm sure a decent amount of you have experienced, and some of you might not even be aware of it. So, the subconscious mind actually deeply ingrains emotions. And if they're deeply ingrained negative emotions, that's trauma. So if you have trauma, that's because it's in the subconscious. Think about it. We know that the subconscious doesn't differ between what's real and what's fake. So something happened to me when I was 7 years old that was so traumatic. It was so traumatic that every time I get triggered, whether that's a thought or an emotion, right? It can be both thoughts and emotions that cause us to feel things, but the thoughts and emotions create this cycle. It's the cycle of energetic programming. And that's the thing that the subconscious is feeding off of, right? But if you just realize that it's emotion ingrained in our body, in our mind, that it's not actually what we're experiencing, it's just what we're conditioned to experience, you will actually be able to see the healing and transformation journey begin. And it's when you rewrite these imprints, right? We can have certain thoughts and emotions. At some point, they could just be negative, right? But what if we started to rewrite it in a positive manner? If we said, hey, we're no longer going to allow those emotions to dictate those thoughts. And every time we do experience that, we're going to transmutate it into something positive. You can start to rewrite and imprint the subconscious on a positive level. That's the secret, is that in the present moment, nothing is set in stone. Nothing is set in stone, and that's magical. So let's get into the sixth point and final point before we get into the things that you can actually do to reprogram your subconscious mind. So we know that the subconscious mind is actually tapped into the quantum. And that Carl Jung talks about something called the collective unconscious. Now, this is where all the mystical experiences are starting to happen. Have you ever thought about someone and they text you? Or have you experienced synchronicities and alignments that were like, whoa, reality's talking back to me type of thing? That's because your subconscious mind on a deep energetic level is connected to the quantum field. And the subconscious isn't just personal. It's not just personal experiences. This is why they talk about we have family traumas we need to overcome that are passed down, because it's energetic. It's passed down through our genes, the epigenetics. And that is our job to consciously overcome it and rewrite it in this moment. And through that repetition of thoughts, emotions, affirmations, visualizations, habits, actions, we actually rewrite the subconscious programming. And when we rewrite the subconscious programming, we can experience a new reality. Now, let's talk about how you can actually tap into that command center and actually reprogram your reality to be whatever you want it to be. So the first thing that you need to understand when it comes down to reprogramming the command center, reprogramming the subconscious, is going to be the first thing of repetition and immersion. And that's going to be, how can you feed your subconscious aligned thoughts, affirmations, and inputs daily? Repetition, and immersion. How can you immerse yourself in a new experience? Now, there's a variety of ways to do this, right? This is what happens when we meditate. This is what happens when we visualize. This is what happens when we journal. But like I said in that basketball metaphor, this is only 50% of the repetition. How do we immerse ourselves in that change? We do this through habits. With discipline, we actually can change what we want to experience. We do this through action. And if you do this long enough, the subconscious mind will have a new layer of belief. Every time I don't feel like doing something, I think about it like a video game. I'm like, okay, I can use this tool. I can use this tool to get to this belief that will create this new reality for me, right? But that might take me a while. If I really want it to happen quick, why don't I add this third tool, this fourth tool, and this fifth tool that allows me to unlock 100% of the repetition and immersion? Because then I will program the belief into the subconscious quicker, which will allow reality to shift quicker, right? The more you do it, the quicker your subconscious is going to be programmed to look for that experience in your life. So why just meditate 5 minutes a day? When you can visualize for 15, you can journal for 15, you can engage in the habits for 2 hours, and you can take action on it for 2 hours. Think about it. We just went from 5 minutes to 4 hours and 35 minutes of reprogramming the subconscious mind. But that's the secret, is that the reprogramming doesn't just have to happen in these environments. It happens in everything you do. So once you treat it like a video game and you realize, oh my God, everything I do that's different in a familiar or not a non-familiar experience, and I'm changing the experience I do want to have, I'm creating a new reality for myself. And when you create a new reality for yourself, this is where you're going to have a deep, energetic, and emotional experience. This is where you're going to feel something new. This is what Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about. That's the second thing that'll reprogram your subconscious mind, right? These elevated states. In my own personal life, the elevated states come through action, right? Because if people have a tough time visualizing or a tough time meditating, and they're in their conscious mind, right? So if you're too in your head, you're not going to let it flow. You're not going to let that change to happen. And if you're just beginning, I've learned that one of the quickest ways to have a new experience is through action. They're actually doing the thing. Let me use a metaphor of my life today, right? So I want to get in great shape. How am I going to get in great shape? Do things that I don't want to do. This morning I woke up and I ran 10 miles. When I got out of bed, I felt tired. That was an emotion, right? I was tired. So my alarm went off at 7:20 and I laid in bed for 10 more minutes. And in bed, I'm like, Grant, maybe you just run 6 miles today. Maybe you just run 6 miles today. That was a thought. And those things started to create more emotions and thoughts. But then I just came back to the present moment. I'm like, Grant, you know what? Just slow down. What do we do in this present moment? We haven't started running 10 miles yet, but what can we do? You know, we can get out of bed. So I got out. I can stretch. I can get some water. These are all things channeling a new experience, saying, hey, Grant, you're pretty much running 10 miles. You're just doing different things that aren't just the 10 miles yet. But on a deeper level, if I do want to have a new reality and a new experience of being in great shape, what's going to allow me to experience that elevated emotion in everything I do? I start to check the boxes. I start to stack small wins, and I start to feel aligned with the reality of me being in shape. Now I'm here filming this video for you, and guess what? I ran the 10 miles, and I got crazy endorphins after that. Crazy endorphins, which put me in an elevated state, and I did it through action, but I did it through small micro actions. And yes, Dr. Joe Dispenza does talk about how you can skip the doing part, right? You can go from thinking to being. But in that basketball study, he talks about that the real exponential change happens is when you stack action with that visualization and belief. That's where the real sauce happens. Now, the third thing I want to touch on is going to be cool. This is what a lot of other gurus and esoteric figures and coaches talk about, and it's going to be identity shifting. Because identity shifting is a state of being. Identity is being, right? On a core fundamental level, how do we change our state of being? You have to become the version of you who already has it. So let's say at some point people want to experience more financial abundance, right? How do we feel the things that are aligned with financial abundance? I could sit around waiting for money, maybe thinking that eventually someone will just show up on my door with $1 million. But the odds of that happening, you got to be like an insane guru and manifestor to make that happen. But how do I experience financial abundance? I can give to others. I can work on my business. I can tip the waiter. Now, this is the secret. This is how you shift into a state of being that attracts everything. Look at all these things that actually have nothing to do with the dollar, that actually signify that you are that person. This is, like I was saying, stack small actions that attract this reality and this outcome. That's the secret. And that's how your identity, how you identify yourself, is going to be through the small things that you don't even know you were making identifications upon. And then eventually you're just going to change your state of being. All right, I'm going to combine 2 of the steps into 1. So I'm flipping around the order a little bit, but I think it's going to be able to provide you a lot of value. Now, I want you to drop a comment in the chat if you're starting to understand how powerful your subconscious mind actually is. And I want you to let me know if you actually understand and have started to pick up on the things of how this hidden command center might have actually been controlling your reality. I'd love to see your engagement. So let's combine 2 of them, right? So everyone talks about meditation. What does meditation give us? Presence, and it gives us stillness. Now, what's the concept we're going to stitch this together with? Visualization. So we know that the subconscious mind doesn't know what's real or not, right? Because thought is the most powerful thing in the universe. This is the law of mentalism, right? This is what we talked about on the stream last night. This is the first universal law from the Kabbalion, and that's mentalism. That thought precedes everything. This whiteboard was a thought before someone created it, right? So on a bigger, grander level, if we look at things and entire identity shifts that manifest in life, it starts with the thought, which is a visualization that we could be experiencing something new. Now, how do we get to a place where the visualizations are strong, right? Because if that subconscious voice and that subconscious programming is in your ear and it's not allowing you to kind of actually allow yourself to change your reality, you're like, oh my God, those negative thoughts, those negative emotions are just fighting back. What do we actually need to do? We need to meditate. And I talk about this a lot in the videos. Because when you meditate, you create a gap and this gap is the distance between an impulse, right, our thoughts and our emotions, the reprogramming, the subconscious mind, and eventually stepping into a reaction. This reaction is just going to signify the same reality and the familiar experience we want to avoid. So if we practice presence and we practice stillness and we start to meditate, we're going to create this gap right here. And this gap is stillness, right? This is the quantum. It's what Joe Dispenza talks about, the 99.9% energy, that's infinite potential. And if that energy is conscious, right, we know that thought is just an energetic field programmed with information, which is the law of mentalism. That in that moment, we can use our thoughts to visualize a new reality for ourselves. And the more that we practice presence and stillness and meditate, the less we're going to have this impulse in our way, causing us to experience a reaction where I'm like, oh my God, meditation is hard. There's that voice in my head. Well, if you meditate and you just be, and that voice starts to get quieter and quieter through repetition, through practice, through action, then you're going to experience a new reality. Now, let's move on to the final step, and that is going to be step 6. This is going to be the final thing you need to reprogram your subconscious mind and experience your power as a creator. And that is going to be the most important step of all. I saw comments about my erasing. They're like, start an ASMR channel about just your erasing. I was like, okay, sure. That 6th step, the most important one, is going to be understanding contradiction. I've experienced this in my own life, and it was the one thing keeping me paralyzed. Now I want you to think about all the ways you have goals and visualizations and dreams for yourself that are contradicted through your actions, words, and subconscious programs. Because the one thing we're after is congruency. But this congruency needs to be conscious. And the only way we can make conscious decisions is in this moment. When we realize that the subconscious does exist, we can change the inputs of our thoughts, of our emotions. And when we start to change these inputs and we experience repetition, this repetition creates a new cycle in our life. And this cycle, if engaged with long enough, is going to create congruency, and we're going to overcome the contradiction and misalignment between our thoughts, actions, behaviors, and emotions that we're creating a familiar experience we want to avoid. And by changing these things, putting ourselves on a new cycle of repetition, we start to experience conscious congruency. We're reprogramming our subconscious mind to be the command center that serves the reality we want to experience. Your subconscious mind is a direct link to effortless manifestation, transformation, and personal mastery. Mastering it means you create your reality instead of being a product of conditioning. Now, I wanted to throw this video together for you because it's one of the most powerful concepts that you can actually understand about your own state of being. And that there's no reason to judge yourself for the things that happen. You just realize that there's this hidden command center in the background running the software of the hardware of the body. And once you start to change that and program your mind with this information, you can create a new reality for yourself. So once again, go check out the workbook in the description if you haven't already. I'm going to be streaming. Odds are if you're watching this is dropping on a Monday, so I'm streaming tonight at 6:30 p.m. PST. I wrote 6 p.m. PST, but we're going to be live eventually around that time. We're figuring out the schedule still. And if you're not going to show up, you don't even need the workbook. You just showed up for the vibes. Drop a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.